granniopteryx, granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
So, my previous video I was talking about Wasta, which is an Arabic word meaning intermediary or a facilitator of some sort. And it refers to a very common practice in every Muslim society I can think of, whereby you belong to certain families and you do favours for people in your family, cousins, uncles, aunts, and all those, and they do favours for you. And this system is basically, it's like a sort of funnel. You may start off with quite a wide spread of people, and then bit by bit it narrows down until the pool of talent you have to draw on is very small indeed. And you can see it in the Labour Party now. They're doing a very similar thing now. When Keir Starmer had to resign, out of all the MPs they had, they couldn't choose one for a Prime Minister. They had to fiddle the books so that Andy Burnham could get into place and then become Prime Minister. There was nobody else to choose from. But why weren't any of the backbenchers being chosen? Well, a lot of them were very inexperienced, but also a lot of them were just outside this bubble. There's a sort of elite bubble at the top of the Labour Party, and most of the backbenchers aren't in that bubble. They are just voting fodder, and they know it. And they don't mind so long as they're drawing their MPs' salaries. But in any case, there are no bright sparks there. You didn't see any bright sparks. And Rachel Reeves was pretending to be an economist when she was Chancellor of the Exchequer, and she wasn't. And then the business secretary said he was a solicitor, and he wasn't. He hadn't qualified. They were just making up. They were making up qualifications, as opposed to previous governments where many of the MPs had several degrees. I mean, at least they had reasonable quality brains. Camilla Tomini writes, the cabal of Labour families in Burnham's nepo-government. So here, these guys, Reeves and Cryer. Reeves is Rachel Reeves' sister. She's the Attorney General now, and she is married to John Cryer, who's a Labour peer. He's in the House of Lords. And then there's Stephanie Peacock and Vicky Foxcroft. Stephanie Peacock's the Culture Minister. Vicky Foxcroft is an ex-Labour whip. They were all bridesmaids of Ellie Reeves, by the way, so they're all big pals, aren't they? The next lot, Stephen Kinnock. He's the son of Neil Kinnock, who was the head of the Labour Party and almost stood a chance of becoming Prime Minister. And he's married to Gladys Kinnock, also a minister. And then there's Hamish Falconer, who is now the Foreign Minister. He's the son of Charles Falconer, the ex-Lord Chancellor. And these two sisters here, Angela Eagle, the Environment Secretary, and Maria Eagle, an ex-minister, and Yvette Cooper and Ed Balls. They're married, and he was Shadow Chancellor. He's now being employed in television or radio. I don't know which channel it was, but there was a famous, fairly recent incident where Yvette Cooper, who was at the time, I think, the Home Secretary, was being interviewed by Ed Balls, who was being the anchor of this news programme, and they were making no sign that they were in any way related. He called her the minister or whatever, and they must have been discussing this over breakfast earlier on. So his apparent grilling of her would have been all previously pre-rehearsed. Then there's these two who are married. The Work and Pensions Secretary, Pat McFadden, is married to Mariana McFadden, Labour's Deputy General Secretary, and Alex Norris is the Justice Secretary. He's married to Emma Foodie, who's a Labour whip. They're all, you see, whether they're good at this or not, they're getting a very high salary for these appointments. And here we have these two brothers, you know, the Miliband brothers. And all of these ladies were bridesmaids for each other, apparently. It says, for a politician who spent the better part of a decade posturing as the King of the North and an antidote to the suffering centralism of Southwest One, Andy Burnham's arrival in Downing Street was supposed to signal a fresh start. And he positioned himself as the change candidate. The best they could do was Andy Burnham, who has left Manchester. When he was running Manchester, the greater Manchester area, he's left them with a £1.3 million debt. Billion, sorry. £1.3 billion debt, I believe. So for all that he's talking about being a circuit breaker, he's just gone back to the same old by the looks of things. Nowhere is this insularity more obvious than in the relentless elevation of Westminster's most infamous inner circle, the bridesmaid gang, when Ellie Reeves posed last year on the House of Commons terrace alongside her bridesmaid, Sister Rachel Reeves, Culture Minister Stephanie Peacock and Vicky Foxcroft, then Labour's Deputy Chief Whip. It wasn't just a nostalgic throwback, it was a blueprint for how patronage operates at the top of the party. So here it's called not Wasta, but patronage. It's the same thing though. And as you can see what's happened to, in my previous video, I pointed out that Muslim countries have generally speaking, gone downhill since their colonial masters pulled out, because at least their colonial masters would appoint people who were qualified for the job because they weren't in the Wasta system. But after the colonies pulled out and these people were in charge of themselves, it just took a couple of generations for everything to start falling apart. And what worries me is the way this is happening here. And, you know, I don't like to be in a country that's going downhill in that sort of way. The frustration within the Parliamentary Labour Party is palpable. Figures who were widely tipped for major portfolios, such as Dr. Rosina Alin Khan for health, have been overlooked, while the same pre-selected clique continues to rotate through key positions. Ellie Reeves, whose tenure managing campaign operations was marred by accusations of heavy-handedness, remains firmly entrenched in power as Attorney General, alongside figures like former Chief Whip Jonathan Reynolds, the Business Secretary. The message to backbenchers is clear. Alignment with a network matters far more than competence. Well, we're back to that Wasta thing again. I'm leaving a link in the description. They are appointing each other, passing appointments around amongst each other. And so the brightest and the best, they're not getting a look in because they're outsiders. And in my last video, I pointed out that people in the Arab world who were able and competent and bright, they are going to live and work in the countries of their ex-colonial masters, because those are the only places where they'll get ahead. And what's going to happen here is that the able people in the Labour Party, they're going to just leave and take up, you know, industry. They're going to go abroad. They're going to go into other sorts of services. And the pool of what might be moderately competent is going to just narrow down into the completely incompetent after a fairly short time. Burnham's decision to install Annelise Midgley as Reynolds' successor when she was only elected as an MP 2 years ago, terrible grammar here. She was only elected an MP. She was elected as an MP only 2 years ago. Speaks volumes. Instead of promoting proven talent based on merit, the administration has once again chosen a loyalty. That is, they owe this person and that this person is going to owe them. Loyalty over depth. Far from stripping away elitism, the new Prime Minister's front bench reads like a genealogical register of political dynasties. She talks here about Stephen Kinnock, Neil Kinnock's son, Hamish Falconer, the son of Tony Blair's Lord Chancellor. Well, the Miliband's, they were also sons of a Labour grandee. How can a party founded to represent the working class credibly preach meritocracy to the country when its own front bench relies so heavily on family ties and inherited networks? Beyond explicit family lines lies the sprawling network of Westminster power couples, people who are married. And here they have a picture of that particular programme I was talking about, where Ed Balls is pretending to be throwing hardball questions at Yvette Cooper, who turns out to be his wife. Well, there's a whole list here. Maybe I'll leave a link to that article in the description. Yeah, I am quite worried about this because, as I say, I know quite a bit about Middle East, and I know how it's disintegrated since the 70s, as I said in my previous video. In the 10 years the colonial powers pulled out in the 60s. And so you saw really go-ahead, imaginative, inventive societies in the Muslim world in the 70s. And then, let's say give it a generation, it was starting to disintegrate by the 90s. And by now it's a complete mess. Didn't take that long. And in my previous video, I talked about Lebanon, which is a striking example. And I don't want this country to end up like that. In our case, probably a slower deterioration. But hey, I've got grandchildren, and I want them to have a country they can be proud of and a country they can get ahead in, instead of having to leave to get ahead somewhere else. Okay, well, yeah, that's it. Wasta, Britannia. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.